In the discourse, and we have been talking about, of course, the mitzvah of Ahavat Yisrael, loving our fellow as ourselves, and also not hating another Jew in our heart. These are two commandments right out of the Torah, and it's been quite a journey. It's really quite amazing how the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Chabad Rebbe, goes into all of these, goes into really developing this mitzvah to such a great degree. And where we last left off, the Rebbe was sharing the meaning of Hillel. Hillel said that which you don't like, don't do to others. If you don't like something, don't do it to others. Which you yourself don't like, don't do to other people. That is the entire Torah. The rest is a commentary. Go and study the commentary. So what did he mean? That which you don't like, don't do to others. You remember? Maybe somebody can tell us, not your own thoughts about it, although I'm sure they're very interesting and profound. But who remembers what did Tzemach Tzedek explain? What is it particularly that Hillel was referring to when he said that which you don't like, don't do to others? There was one particular point. We'll let everyone think on that for a moment. And
Rabbi, are you trying to say don't do unto others if you don't want others to do unto you?
Right, but the Rebbe had asked the question, which is why did he say that in the negative? And because he's bringing out a more profound idea of loving your fellow, and the Tzedek actually explained that he's referring to a very specific thing that we don't like. Ben Sion, please.
I think I'm remembering that he meant things that you don't want to tell others. You don't want others to know. Things that are personal to you.
Yes.
Those kind of things that he was talking about.
So we all know our own flaws.
Yeah.
But what we don't like is when people reveal them, when people uncover them. So that is the basic point. When we love somebody, when we really love somebody, we don't see their flaws. And as the Rebbe explained at great length, that doesn't mean that we don't see them. It means that they are not registered as flaws. They're just conditions. Like if somebody comes into synagogue in a wheelchair, right? Does anybody judge them or think any less of them? Or no, of course not. And we try not to even see it. We try to reach beyond a problem, a difficulty, and see the human being behind that. Or if somebody there's all different kinds of physical flaws that a person can have. And in our day and age, we look beyond the disability, we look beyond maybe a deformity, and we see the human being.
I usually hold the door for them.
Very good.
Because they usually have a problem going through a door. So I usually hold the door for them.
So my wife has a good friend, and the husband was a paraplegic, and they were at the Niagara Falls. So it was a little warm, so he took off his hat and put it on his lap. The wife came back after 10 minutes, and there was like $20 in the hat. People had put money in his hat. She said, "What's this?" Well, I wasn't going to stop them. So people always like to help out. But on a much more serious note, So this is a story with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. This is an amazing story. There are no miracles, which makes the story even more amazing. So the Rebbe generally he would recite the Shema, right? Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, and then he would lean on his, with his fingers on his temple, and he would recite the Shema in such a way, and that was kind of the regular way that the Rebbe would say the Shema. It was in such a way. Perhaps we cannot imagine what the reason was. He never told us. We don't know. But then in the mid 80s, the Rebbe occasionally would not do that. And it was unusual because the Rebbe would always do that, but then there were some times when the Rebbe wouldn't. So there are people who pay attention to such things and look and see, why is the Rebbe doing this? Why is the Rebbe doing that? And this is what they noticed. That in the mid 80s, there was an Israeli fellow who came to 770. I remember myself, as I was there during that time, who had a terrible face deformity. He had a terrible deformity in his whole body, really, but of course it showed very much it was a facial deformity. And what they realized was that whenever that person came, the Rebbe had already mentioned that person should come up to the front. He wants that person in the front of the shul because people were giving him a hard time. So the Rebbe wanted him in the front. And whenever he was there, the Rebbe would not say the Shema like this. Because if the Rebbe said Shema like this, some might construe it that the Rebbe didn't want to look at his face or see his face. We know it's difficult, right? We have to reach a little bit deeper inside to look beyond a deformity to see the human being. That takes some effort. And not everyone's always willing to do that. So the Rebbe would not follow his regular practice because it could be construed as not wanting to see his face. So the Rebbe said the Shema like that, so that the person would be in the corner of his eye. He would see the person with his full, beautiful deformity. All right, in the chat, let's see. I am Rabbi Rice, Yisrael Rice. That's my name. Okay. So, yeah, it would be useful to have my name. I should put my name up someplace else so you could see who's speaking. All right.
Rabbi.
Yes.
This fellow with the deformed face, it was kind of like a purplish color.
Yes.
I remember him. I lived in Crown Heights at the time. And I was just thinking about him about 2 days ago. So it's Hashgacha Pratis that you should bring this up.
Interesting. Yeah. So the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek in this discourse that he puts forth the idea that we should basically, if you love somebody, you don't see a flaw. You might see a condition, right? But you don't see a flaw. And that's really the difference of that's what we mean when we say you don't see the flaw. You see a condition. You don't see a shortcoming in the other person. You don't see a problem with the other person. Now, we all know, of course, that in real life, we see people's flaws. We see people's shortcomings. We see everything other people are doing wrong. And what the Rebbe is teaching us is that just like we naturally cover over our own flaws, we cut ourselves some slack, we still really like ourselves, love ourselves, and that's good. That's good and natural that we should love ourselves. And what about our own flaws that we're aware of? We don't put them in the foreground. We put them in the background. Yeah, I'm aware of them, and maybe one day I'll work on it, maybe I won't, but it's nobody's business. My flaws, it's nobody's business. So we have to take that same way that we have that self-love, the love of our own self, which makes it that we don't see our own flaws. If a person was fully aware and bothered tremendously by their own flaws, it might be hard to live life, right? It's very useful. So we could go on each and every day and wake up in the morning and say, thank you, God, for giving me back my neshama, my soul, and together with all of my imperfections. We cut ourselves slack. Why do we cut ourselves slack? Why do we not see the flaw? Why is the flaw not burning, right? Like I said last week, you hear a guy talking in the middle of davening, and you can become so enraged. We become so indignant. How dare that person talk during davening? But somehow or another, when I talk during davening, it doesn't bother me at all, right? So we all have these experiences where when somebody else is doing it, it bothers us tremendously. But when we do it, it doesn't bother us. So the Rebbe puts forth the meaning of this mitzvah, the inner meaning of the mitzvah of loving our fellow Jew is the same love that we have for ourselves, which allows us to cover our own flaws with what he calls a blanket of love, so that we are aware of it, but we don't see the flaw. We should put that blanket over everyone else as well, all other Jewish people, so that we don't see a flaw. Somebody is talking during davening, somebody is talking during the rabbi's speech. Okay, it's wrong. It's not, it's not correct, but I don't see it as a flaw. It's a condition. It's a situation. Anna, please.
Yeah. I have a little problem, not with the concept at all. I understand perfectly well that in a loving way, you could accomplish so much more than if you will do it with the hate. I have no doubts about it. But there's so many situations in life where we are ourselves with all of the love and respect that we definitely have naturally for our own, whatever, ego and physical body, everything. We still criticizing ourselves, sometimes even harsh. That's the way we are learning. That's the way we are improving. That's the way we are becoming better than we are. That's applying the same method, the same system. Let's say it's your child. We don't know if they will change, not change, whatever. But just simply ignore it, not the best way to do it. I agree again, it should be done this very tactful and very sensitive and respectful way. But just to say it, don't do to someone what you would not do to yourself. In many cases, you don't even need to, because you're not into a negative action or ideas or flaws that you see on others. Plus, there's so many professional skills where judges and attorneys, and in many cases, teachers are involved in the process of changing, of not ignoring, not seeing, oh, you're talking when a teacher is explaining, you're interfering with everybody else way of understanding. I'm sorry, it's just something
That's okay. That's an excellent point that you make up, that you're bringing up here. And I want to address it because it's definitely relevant to what we're learning here. So as the Rebbe is saying that anybody in all situations in life, anybody acting in a particular way, we should always just ignore it and not see the flaw at all. And what about I'll add to your list, Anna, okay? There's a mitzvah in the Torah that you shall reprimand your fellow. Right? So the Torah itself tells us that you're supposed to reprimand another person if they're doing wrong. So one second, but I shouldn't see anybody doing anything wrong. How could I ever fulfill that mitzvah? And clearly, it's a very important mitzvah in the Torah. So let me address that. Thank you for bringing that up, because I was going to bring it up, and you bring it up now. Okay, so here's the story. This is and this might take a good part of the class, if not the whole class, but we'll see. We'll see how we can do it. Okay, so there's a mitzvah to reprimand others. And but there's also a point over here that we should not see another person's flaws. Now, there's a talk of the Rebbe where the Rebbe he goes through this very clearly and explains exactly how to address and exactly how to answer your question. And this is what the Rebbe explains. He says that naturally for good reasons, we don't feel our own flaws in the same way as when we see somebody else doing it. And we cover over our own flaws. So if we're being, for instance, if we're being inconsiderate, we don't see it as inconsiderate. I'm not being inconsiderate. I'm just being honest. I'm just being direct. When we see somebody else acting in such a way, it's inconsiderate. All of a sudden, we have a different title for it. We have a different description of what's going on. So because we don't see meaning we don't feel our own flaws, the Rebbe says, and this is based on the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. And the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov is on it's actually a teaching from the laws of Mitzorah. It says, Kol nega adam roeh, that a person is allowed to see any ailment of tzarat. Tzarat was a type of an ailment, a skin ailment that the Kohen would take a look at, and the Mishnah teaches us that kol nega adam roeh, that a person is allowed to take a look at any such blemish, any such nega, any such eruption on the skin, chutz menige atzmo, except for his own. So what that means is you're allowed to see your relatives, you're allowed to see your good friends, you could take a look to diagnose to see if he has this nega, this skin problem, tzara'at, but except for his own he cannot diagnose. So the Baal Shem Tov, so the way we normally look at this Mishnah is that's where the comma goes. Kol nega adam roeh, any nega, any tzara'at a Kohen can look at, chutz minige atzmo, except for his own. The Baal Shem Tov puts the comma here and gives us an amazing pshat. Kol nega adam roeh chutz, any nega, any ailment, skin ailment, the tzarat that a person sees, any nega, any problem that you see somebody has outside of you, you know why you're seeing that problem? It's minige atzmo. It's from your own problem. Any problem that you're witnessing in another person, it's minige atzmo. It's because you have it yourself. We're going to still answer your question. I know this doesn't answer your question yet, Anna. We'll get to it. So when you're looking at somebody and you're seeing they're inconsiderate or they're problematic, they're being rude, they're being this, that, or the other thing, whatever description we want to give it, anytime you have a judgment, you see a nega, you see a problem with somebody else, it is minige atzmo, it is your own. It's coming really from your own problem. That's why you're so bothered by it. And Hashem, in his great kindness, is allowing you to see your own problem through seeing it in somebody else. Because when we look at ourselves, we think, again, I wasn't being inconsiderate, I was just being honest. No, now watch somebody else doing it. Oh, it is inconsiderate. And that way it serves as a lesson for us. So 1 second, that's really my own problem that I'm getting upset by. And so the Rebbe goes on and asks the question that you asked, Anna. Well, 1 second. What if, isn't there a mitzvah to reprimand another person if they're sinning? There is such a mitzvah. And particularly you have teachers, parents, right? You have to, what are you supposed to just ignore? So the Rebbe explains as follows, and he gives us the following rule of thumb, and this is an amazing lesson in life. And I actually speak about it in my book, the chapter on relating to others. And before this particular teaching, I put a warning saying you should only read this next section if you're really open to change. And this is what the Rebbe explains, because it's a tough pill to swallow. The Rebbe says, if you see a person sinning, let's just use the word sinning, you see somebody, but you don't see it as a flaw, you just see it as the situation, you see it as a condition, you have no judgment about that person whatsoever, then you know that it's your job to go and help that person improve by reprimanding them. Or if you're a teacher, even as a teacher, you should not be, I've taught children for many, many years, and I can tell you that where I have succeeded, it is where I had no judgment for the child, and I had no judgment for the child and their scholastic abilities. I didn't even have judgment for their behavioral issues. And I just realized they're a child acting like children act, and I had no judgment of it. Those were on my much better days. On my worst days, I became judgmental, and that did not work at all. That was either it was a problem or it was a problem in myself waiting to happen. You see, so even as parents, now, as parents and even as teachers, sometimes you have to suspend the high levels. And, if your child doesn't say thank you or doesn't say please, you need to tell them this is what we do. And even if you're being judgmental, all right, but the higher way of being is that we are still not judging them. It's a condition called childhood. They don't yet know, and it's my opportunity. Sometimes children would treat me with disrespect. They would not have the proper respect for a teacher. So I would take them outside of the room and I'd say, it's my job not just to teach you, but also to let you know that you're being disrespectful. I bet you don't mean to be disrespectful, but you are. So let's try to be more respectful in the future. You see, to be able to approach it from seeing it as a condition, not as a flaw. When you see it as a flaw, oh, their parents are terrible, their parents have no respect, and so therefore they don't, and they never learned it in their home, and they're horrible people. This is the kind of narrative we would never apply to ourselves, you see. As terrible as, even though we're aware of our flaws, don't apply that narrative to anybody else. When we can lift ourselves up to be at this level of life, of living, and seeing others, and somebody spoke about speaking in shul. I'll tell you what I did about that in a moment. We're no longer looking at people's flaws. These are conditions. People have got physical conditions. Sometimes people have to walk with a cane or with a walker or in a chair. Some people have emotional conditions, right? They are not entirely emotionally stable. And hopefully we learn in life that we treat these people with a little greater sensitivity. I've got news for you. Everyone has a condition. And they're not all good. Everybody has a condition. And if what we look at are people that have conditions, right? And that's too bad that they're not, that they can't have full control of themselves or they can't appreciate it.
Just hope that you don't have too many conditions.
Hopefully you don't have too many. And by the way, the conditions that we have, they're, some of them are of our own making. Some of them we had the great a merit of inheriting them from our parents or grandparents. Everybody has, stop judging people. Stop condemning people. But we do it. We naturally do it, you see. And that's the power of this mimer telling us that we don't have to be seeing people's flaws. Instead, we can be seeing people's conditions. All of a sudden, it got so much better. That's a horrible person who has no respect whatsoever, and he's a disgrace to the entire community. And now he's got a condition. He's got a verbal condition. He can't keep his mouth shut during davening. It's a verbal condition. He all of a sudden, just with me changing my attitude, that person changed from a horrible person to a person with a condition. So to reiterate what the Rebbe said in this talk, it was in Parshat Noach. It's printed in Likutei Sichot. I'm sure it's available in English. Let's see. People are constantly talking during services, and when the rabbi speaks, I, for one, don't talk during services, or when the rabbi impolite, annoying. Okay. The rabbi hears it and the rabbi doesn't say anything because the rabbi learned the Sikha. I was just reading Bruce's comment here. The rabbi learned the Sikha, and saying something, it doesn't always help. So I'm going to tell you what I did personally for people talking and davening during davening. So personally, I studied in yeshiva, I study Chassidus, and I take prayer, I take tefillah relatively seriously. I like to meditate beforehand. I like to focus on the words and say it slowly and enjoy the davening. So there I am, endeavoring to focus on my prayer, and people are chattering in the back behind me. So my the first response is I get irritated. They've got no respect. They've got, why can't they keep quiet? And people are trying to daven, and it's all of the things that normally bother us. Didn't seem to bother them that much, but it was bothering me. It was irritating me. Then I learned the Sikha. I learned this, what I'm teaching you now, I learned the Sikha. So now the next week, the people I'm praying, they're chattering, and I'm thinking, since I'm judging them, which I clearly was, it must be it's something in me. It's my own issue. So what is my problem with them? That they don't take their prayers seriously and they're being disrespectful to their prayer. Can I apply that to myself? Do I ever not take my prayers seriously? Yeah, many times I wander or whatever, my mind wanders. I'm not focused on it adequately. I can definitely understand that I myself am guilty of what I'm condemning them of. I'm condemning them that they are not being respectful of prayer, but I myself am not respectful of prayer to the degree that I should be. So instead of judging them, I turned it around to myself. And as I shared with you last week, that whenever you're pointing one finger at somebody else, right, you've got three pointed back at yourself. That's a cute line with this. Whenever you're condemning somebody else, you've got three fingers pointed back at yourself. That's what this teaching is of the Rebbe, of the Baal Shem Tov, that really it's me. And then after I was able to overcome my own judgment and my own indignation, then I was able to walk over to them and say, hey, you know what? People are trying to focus on prayer. Maybe you want to talk a little bit more quietly. You can certainly walk out into the corridor and talk. Nobody would mind, but without getting upset at them, without getting, and then I came to the realization a little bit later that, you know what? I'm coming to shul to serve Hashem the way that I know how. And these Jews are coming to shul to serve Hashem how they know how. And how they know how is to talk to their friends about all different kinds of things, the sports and the food they ate and the this and the that. That is their level. That's their level of consciousness as of today. And that's okay. But they're doing the same thing that I am. They are serving Hashem with the knowledge that they have. The knowledge that they have leads them to talk during. I'm not saying that talking during davening is okay. Of course not. But is judging them and getting angry at them okay? No, it's not. And when you can reach this understanding, you can live a much more enjoyable life. When you go to shul and people are irritating you the whole time, it's very irritating, right? What if you could not be irritated? Well, that's what this teaching is allowing us to do. It's giving us this ability to not be irritated. I was teaching I have a bar mitzvah club, and I had some boys, a new group. There was a new kid who came, and he started bouncing up and down in the chair. He started bouncing. He's in my office, so I have an upholstered chair, and he started bouncing up and down in the chair. And I told myself, there's nothing wrong with this at all. Don't be a teacher from the 1950s. This is not effective. We all know that in the 1950s, if you were bouncing up and down in your chair, you would have gotten what we call in Polish a frask. You would have gotten a slap, maybe with a warning beforehand, maybe not with a warning beforehand. But this is not appropriate at all. He's a 12-year-old boy, and he's boisterous, and he's bouncing up in his chair. So eventually I start bouncing up and down in my chair as well. Kind of let him know that I don't have any problem with it. So, listen, I'm not saying that you can't have any rules and the rules can't be kept and there can't be decorum. There can be. There can be if you can do it with love. If you can do it with acceptance, and you can do it of showing a person a higher way without judging them and making them wrong and bad, then you can do that. So Anna, I hope I answered your question. I was planning on talking on this anyway, so it's not a side point. It's definitely very relevant to what we're talking about. And you will find that if ever you are in a situation of teaching others, guiding others, this is going to be an unbelievable guiding principle. That we are never judging the person. We are never condemning the person. We are always lifting the person up to what they could be and our hope and our aspiration in them. Otherwise, we're letting our mind become poisoned against them. How can you be poisoned against them if you're trying to teach them, if you're trying to train them, if you're trying to guide them? You can't. You can't really. All right. Any questions or comments? Benzian.
Yeah, to me, I'm getting used to people talking behind you, but what bothers me more sometimes is somebody coming into shul, especially a new person, and he's davening loud enough to disturb you. So I'm not davening in the same speed as they davening. So I'm saying one thing, they saying another. I'm saying it to myself. I don't say it out loud, but that's really more interfering than bothering me.
Sure, right. I understand what you're meaning. It's that's why a minyan is so holy. It's not so easy to get along with 9 other people praying at the same time. It's but I've got 2 solutions for that problem, and I use them myself sometimes during davening when people are davening too loud for me. Here's solution number 1, and here's solution number 2. Okay.
I use number 3.
You use number 3.
Yeah. If I know the person, I went over to him afterwards and told him, the Talmud says you shouldn't do it. Not I say.
Right. People are not right. People are not.
Because it says you should only pray so you can hear yourself. Not others.
So the Talmud, that point in the Talmud, Benzian, is actually, if this person was learned, he'd say that teaching in the Talmud is referring only to the Shmona Esrei.
Right, to the Amida.
To the Amida.
That's the time that I'm talking about.
I see. Yes. Okay. All right. Or you could sometimes humor. Humor is oftentimes also a very good way of dealing with it. Well, he's telling him, even though God is very, very old, his hearing is excellent.
That's a good one. That's number 4.
Number 4, David.
But
there was 2 things. One is a very good solution is there are very inexpensive earplugs on the market. I bought a drum of 100 pairs for less than $10.
Yeah, but you want to hear the chazan.
Yeah. I don't want to hear the guy back of me talking, so it's a trade-off. The second thing is, as far as a person not judging their own blemishes or not seeing their own blemishes properly, it says that from my flesh, I see godliness, which means you could see the way things are operating from your own body. So with your own body, you see that when you look at print on a paper, on a book, you see it. But when you get real close, it becomes all blurry. So when a person is too close to the situation, they're too close to themselves, they're not able to see clearly. And you can see it from physical, with your own eyes by a book.
Right.
I've
Julie,
noticed,
Julian.
Rabbi, isn't there a saying, an expression about the beam in your eye? Having a beam in your eye?
Yeah, but that wasn't a good thing. That was this was based on the beginning of the book of Rus, where it says it was in the days of the judging of the judges.
Wow.
So what does it mean, the judging of the judges? So it means that everybody was judging the judges, and the judge would say you have to remove this beam from someplace, and they would say remove the beam from your eye. Right? So people were, so that's not, this was the way that people are not open to being guided. And those were, the judges, of course, were being paid to judge people, right? That was their job and that was their occupation. But you see, with the real leaders lift people up. Don't put people down. You don't, it's just such a rabbit hole. And there are a lot of people who seem to be very much into that and feel better about themselves when you put other people down. But it's just not a way of Judaism. It's just not the way of Judaism. I've had people complain to me, why didn't you, they were going to such and such a, lecture from such and such a source. And they said, later on, they came to realize that was not, not really good for them. Said, Rabbi, why didn't you tell me? He says, it's not my job to police. I told you about what you should be studying, but I don't tell people, don't go here, don't go there, don't do this, don't do that. Well, whatever, that's my own personal preference. But the point is judgment. And this is something we can apply every single day, especially if you're married. Because even with the people that are near and dear to us, right? We tend to judge. And the judgment is really just, again, the three fingers pointing back at ourselves. And, after you apply this long enough, you realize, well, one second, if every time I see somebody doing something bad, I have to look and find in my own self what the problem is, I better stop seeing the bad in other people, because otherwise I just keep on making myself out to being a bad person. There was actually, in my book, I actually quote also Carl Jung. I want to see if I can find, here it is. I opened right to the page. Look at that. It's on page 127. Is the called The Mirror. You see how you see other people acting is a reflection of really your own self. And I say here that warning, do not read this section unless you are really open to change. Frustration, resentment, and denial will ensue without proper openness. Okay. Carl Jung, here it is. This is from a non-Jewish source, but he comes up with the idea. Everything that irritates us about others, again, we don't mean that you see it, right? We mean that it irritates you. This is really what we're talking about. What other people are doing is irritating you. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. How do you like that? Carl Jung. So when we're irritated by somebody else, right? There's nothing that warrants us to become irritated. Why should I be irritated? That guy is chattering. Okay, I'm trying to concentrate. It's bothering me. All right, granted. All right, there I can understand. But other things, people are acting in a way and it's irritating us. And the Baal Shem Tov says, Kol nega, anytime you see a blemish outside on somebody else, it's from your own self. It's from your own inadequacy. And you need to look and see. It doesn't mean that it's precisely the same thing. There's a very interesting story
Rabbi, before you begin, I don't know if you see, but Bruce has his hand up for a long time.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
it's-
Bruce, I'm sorry. I don't always see the I don't see the iconic hand raises.
It blends into the background, which I have this problem also.
Okay, Bruce, please.
I have noticed one thing though. The only time everyone is quiet and doesn't say a word is when the Kohanim is up at the bima giving the blessing. And that is me.
Ah, very
That
good.
is the only time that I could hear a pin drop.
Look at that. Look at that. So apparently it is possible.
Anything is possible, but
I'm
they
just-
want the blessing.
They want the blessing, huh? They want the blessing. They don't always want the teaching. They don't always
That's
want
the truth.
prayer, but they want the blessing, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
That's all I have to say on that issue.
Okay, thank you for reminiscing about the priestly blessing. So the story. So it's important to understand that Carl Jung, when he says that it reveals something about yourself, and lahavdil, the Baal Shem Tov, that says that it's coming from your own flaw, it doesn't mean that it's identical, right? It doesn't mean that what they're doing, that's exactly what you do. So you have to think into it a little bit. So the story is told with I forget the background. It's a short story, but a chassid was coming to the Rebbe Rashab and saying that I saw somebody, driving in a carriage on Shabbos, riding in a carriage on Shabbos. And it was, for whatever reason, he felt he needed to tell that to the Rebbe. The Rebbe said back to him, so if you're seeing the flaw of another person, that's your own flaw. So he said, Rebbe, I don't violate the Shabbos. I keep Shabbos meticulously. So he said back to the chassid, he said, do you sleep on Shabbos afternoon? He says, yeah, I sleep on Shabbos afternoon. That's your desecration of the Shabbos. For you should be studying Torah during that time. You should be learning, you're saying Tehillim. And for you to go to sleep on the holy day, that's a desecration of Shabbos. You understand? So it doesn't mean that exactly what that person was doing, that's exactly what you do. You have to think into it a little bit to apply it. But the main thing is that we simply should not be seeing, we should be, what the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek is giving us here, and actually this is the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov and the Rebbe that's adjacent to the Maimer, the discourse. But this, to me, this is an elixir. It's an elixir. Imagine living your life not being irritated by people. Do you know how much money people spend on not being irritated by people? And the more irritated we get by people, the more we become irritated. We become agitated and irritated because everything people are doing, is bothering us. Imagine you could live a life where you're not bothered by how other people are living their life. Then you can focus on the good things.
Don't be so sensitive.
Well, I don't know if the irritability is a sensitivity. I think it's maybe it's an insensitivity that we're looking at other people, and when we're looking at our own flaws, maybe and becoming, and we can't live our life because of that. Maybe we have to be less sensitive. But
Yeah.
All right. Yes, Anna.
I'm sure in every situation it would be extremes. First of all, my understanding that you're talking primarily about Jewish people. Are you
First of all, this is the mitzvah. This is what it's talking about. But once you learn to do it with Jewish people, you may as well just apply it across the board, because it really, it doesn't just become a matter of the fact that we shouldn't be judging others. It becomes the matter of I become a different person. You're not allowed to speak Lashon Hara about Jewish people, but you're descending into a pit by talking about other people altogether. So what, I should start talking about non-Jewish people?
No, I understand that.
Right, so it, yes, you're right. It does, technically it does apply to Jewish people. but go ahead.
What about extremes? What about murders? What about terrorists? What about people who are just dangerous for society in general? You know, the tolerance in many cases can really allow people like that to continue killing and to have more and more, the tragedies in our life.
So we hire. So as I told my wife the other week, she said, "Aren't you worried about this? Aren't you worried about that?" I told her I contracted a group in Colombia, South America, and I pay them $25 a month, and they worry for me. They do all the worrying for me, so I don't have to worry anymore. When it comes to this, I pay my tax dollars, and my tax dollars go to a judicial system, including a policing system, so that people that are a danger to society are going to be dealt with in a proper way. And by the way, when I'm talking about not being judgmental, right? What about a judge? Should he be judgmental? Well, no. He also doesn't need to judge he needs to judge the person. Clearly, that's his job, right? And if he sees that that person is guilty, he has to proclaim that that person is guilty and to receive their punishment, right? And even, for instance, a child in my classroom who is disruptive, right? There could be a consequence. Am I saying that a teacher who loves their students isn't going to have a consequence? No, actually, on the contrary. If you love your students, there's going to be a consequence, but the consequence is going to be given lovingly. Parents who are raising their child, they're not going to have a consequence? I'm sure you're very familiar with the line spoken by parents, "This is going to hurt you more than it's going to hurt me," which, of course, a child cannot understand that. So it doesn't mean to withhold the punishment, but the punishment is hurting you more than it's hurting the child. You understand? So clearly we have systems that take care of all of this. But
I think you said it backwards. This is going to hurt me more than this hurts you.
This is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you. Yes, thank you. Yes. Right. When I'm punishing other people's kids, that would apply, right? No, I'm kidding. All right. Right. So that we're not happy to have to administer the consequence, but we do because we love them. Because we love them. But even when you're dealing with people that have, that have serious problems, that doesn't, even if the person has to be dealt with and whatever it may be, that doesn't mean that you can't have compassion upon the human being at the very same time, right? You have people who are angry people who do angry things, and I feel sorry for these people, right? That doesn't mean that I'm going to allow them to come in and mow down everybody else, right? And angry people who can lash out, and I feel sorry for these people. It's a great Rahmanis and other types of extremes of people, right? We're not going to get into sociopaths and people who don't have feelings altogether. We don't need to think about that. But it's a Rahmanis, of course. It's a great Rahmanis. It's a great, we want to arouse the divine mercies upon such people as well. People are acting always according to what seems to make sense to them at the time, according to what they've learned and what they know, and what seems to be the right thing at the time. And oftentimes people end up doing horrible things because of that. So
Thank you.
We're always retaining the humanity, even if we are administering punishment, either personally or on a societal level. All right. We almost even got to the discourse today.
Rabbi.
Reb David, yes.
A fast question. This concept of not being judgmental on other people, how does a person get to be that becomes second nature, rather than just feeling it during the discourse, during the class, and then when the class is over? How do you get that to be long lasting on a regular basis?
That is a very good question. And
it's personal.
Sure, right. And it has to do with just about everything that we learn. Luckily, you're going to be able to apply this today, right? And so step number one is knowing the information, learning it, right? So as we're doing over here. Step number two is in the next hour, say I'm going to make a commitment, set your timer. For the next hour, I'm going to make sure to practice Ahavat Yisrael, meaning that I'm not going to judge. I'm going to see that there's a human being in front of me who has a condition, who's acting in a certain way. And if I'm getting upset by it, that's going to mean it's my very own condition. So if you do in the next hour, if you find that someone irritates you, even on the smallest level, think about yourself. How am I guilty of that? And take it 1 hour right after the class, apply it for 1 hour or 2 hours. Even in the class, even in the classroom, there can be people who are talking or speaking or asking questions that in ways that could be irritating to you, right? There's all different kinds of irritating people out there. I'm so happy I'm not one of them. But we all, but that's the point. The point is to rise above the less mature aspect of ourselves. And the way to do it is to apply it right away.
But is there a range where you say, well, that's too much, and I do have to react?
You never. I have a rule, and I'll have to think if it's. Here's my rule. Whatever it is that you absolutely must say, that's a red flag for something that you really don't have to say at all. Right? So somebody is talking, somebody's saying something, somebody's speaking while the rabbi's speaking, whatever, all different types. I just have to say this, right? Whatever it is that you really must have to say is something that
don't do it.
Don't have to say at all. And that's a red flag. It's a very easy way to know what that thing is because you feel that you really have to say it. So you say, oh, 1 second. I learned that's a red flag. Oh, right. Something that I really have to say, I don't have to say at all. We have a wonderful guest. It's the real Rabbi Menachem Smith.
Oh, wow.
He must be here because he wants to share something relevant with us or join in the study or teach us something beyond. Or just observe. I don't know. Okay, either way.
Just observing.
It's observing. Okay. So that's the, listen, if you take this teaching to an extreme, this would be a good thing. But the thing is, right, there's nothing that you have to be reacting to in life. If you see somebody that's putting themselves in danger, and you have an ability to swoop them up out of that, of course. If you see a child crossing a street and there's a car coming, you grab them out of the street. Of course, you react in that kind of a way. But for most scenarios of our life, you will find that to effectively affect another person, it has to be coming from a place of concern for that other person, not a concern. Most of the time, when we're admonishing people, reprimanding people, it's because they're bugging us.
So it's a selfish thing.
It is a selfish thing. Now, by the way, if somebody's bugging you and you have the ability in a reasonable way, a civil way to talk to them so that they won't be bugging you, of course, communication is always good, right? With your spouse, right? It really bothers me when you do A, B, and C. If it's, there could be, again, there could be things you should definitely not talk, and we're not going to open up that can of worms, right? But there are certain things that, that certainly we can speak up. We can use our words without getting all angry and upset about it. We can use our words, and this is how the Rambam actually defines the mitzvah of admonishing your fellow. Instead of harboring hatred and getting more and more upset about somebody, if somebody's doing something that bothers you, reprimand them. Tell me, you know what? It really bothers me when you do this. So please don't, please don't. And you might, and here's the thing. a person has to hear something many, many times before they're actually going to change their conduct, their behavior. You know, like the teacher that would say, how many times do I have to tell you to not do such and such? Well, science has shown probably about 100 times. I'm not saying the student should tell that to the teacher because that might be perceived as being chutzpahdik. But
You're still way short. Can you say that?
What? Yeah. You got 95 times to go, right? Mrs. Archer, thank you for that question, because I wanted to point out, I'm going to have to hear it about 95 more times before it's really going to change my behavior. But we expect people to change like that, right? Sometimes we tell people something and we expect them to, but we don't. We don't change like that. So it's really just an honesty. It's really just an honesty of being aware that other people are just like you. But we don't get stuck in ourselves so that we get stuck in this vortex of selfishness that we're judging everybody else by a much higher standard than we're judging our very own self. So as I say, I think this teaching of the Rebbe and the Baal Shem Tov is really an elixir of living a wonderful life. Would you rather that everyone would stop their irritating behavior? Or what if you could simply stop getting irritated by everybody? How's
Stop
that?
yourself.
What?
Stop yourself.
Stop yourself, right? Right. It's a one-stop solution. Instead of getting everybody else to stop irritating you, you could just get yourself to stop being irritated by everyone. It's a life work. I'm still working on it. And whenever here's the thing, there's always a yellow flag. The yellow flag, whenever you find yourself getting irritated, you say, oh, 1 second, I'm getting irritated. What did we learn about that?
Yeah.
And you can start becoming reflective instead of reactive. Wouldn't that be a much greater place to be? And even if you have to say something, you can be saying it from a reflective point of view rather than a reactive point of view. A much more effective way of speaking.
What's the sentence that's reflective that you say to yourself?
Well, number one, I become reflective because if I'm getting irritated, it's about me, right? So number one, one of the things, for instance, that I used to tell that I tell children in class, if they're doing sometimes, right? So, the banging of a pen or pencil, right? Or different types of things that kids would do. So I used to ask them to please stop. But more recently, what I say to them is, you know what, that really distracts me. If you could please stop. So it's no longer about me judging them, because whatever, they have some nervous thing they need to get out, and that's a condition, right? But it's distracting to me. If you could please stop, I'd appreciate it, right? That's coming from a whole different place. Instead of, haven't you ever learned how to sit still in a classroom? Now I have condemned them and turned them into a horrible person. Anna.
What about someone who is ambivalent to everything? And it could be so many people, just because of the personality, because being lazy or don't care or something like that. How should we react to someone? And I saw people like that. I don't know what is it. Is it a condition? Is it just that they became so disillusioned of so many different things? But they're just
Move to the other side of the room.
So you're asking, how can you be tolerant of another human being who has a personality that you don't particularly like?
How it should, what kind of the reaction, our reaction or ability to help to someone who is so ambivalent about things, about really don't have values or care. There are quite a few people right now, especially younger people, and it really bothers me a lot. Who cares, whatever, this couple words that I could Really, really big.
I know.
Yeah,
I
it's
know.
such a
Word
irritating.
whatever, like what that carries. No,
Ask
Right.
them what they
whatever.
smoke.
Right? It's
Ask
one of
them
those
what they
words that should
smoke.
make me reflect. So, yeah. So we have to rise above that as well and realize that whatever, right? It's, that person, wow, that person has a personality that's totally different than me. There are other people who are just the opposite that can also irritate us. If only everyone would be just like me, just perfectly like this, right in the middle. They say this about being frum, right? Somebody who does more than me is what are they?
Fanatic.
Ultra. They're ultra religious. They're crazy. And someone who does less than me is irreligious. If people would do just like I am, that's the right level. What are you talking about? But that's how we think, right? We think that we are the perfect balance. Why should we be the perfect balance? There's that person who's doing so much more than me, and that's beautiful. There's that person who's doing far less than me because they haven't learned. That's where they're at. So the same thing with ambivalence. There are people who are ambivalent. Is that their character? Is that their personality? Is that the conclusion they've come to based on their DNA and their life experience? Yes. Just like Anna, your personality has been developed by your life experience and by your DNA. And we need to be equally, right? Any personality that a person has. So some of them might be more irritating, right? But again, that gets back to the teaching. Anytime somebody is irritating us, it should be teaching us something about ourselves. Why is that person irritating me? Why am I so bothered by that? Now there's an interesting question. But that question, of course, lies within. So
But that's the question that needs the answer.
that's the question that only we can answer, right? That's the question that needs the answer. And the more reflective you come about that, eventually you'll stop being bothered by it because you say, I don't want to be so, I don't want to be so self-reflective. I don't want to uncover whatever it is that's bothering me. So I'll just be okay with it. I'll make my peace with it. That's okay too.
I'm afraid you will leave a lot of psychiatrists out of job after this
Imagine
lecture.
that. Yeah, imagine that.
I really believe so.
But look, we only have about 15, 20 people on the call here. So I think there's still so many other people. So they'll remain in business.
They might have more work because now you are concerned about yourself.
Right. Why am I so irritated by that? Doctor, please help me. What could that possibly mean?
Right.
The Rebbe says that when Mashiach comes, all of the work of doctors, there's a doctor saying, I'm going to be out of a job. He says, no, all of the work will be prophylactic. It's all going to be preventive. So I think psychiatrists are going to be teaching Chassidus. They'll be teaching this discourse.
Yeah.
And as Reb David alluded to earlier, okay, we learned it. Now, of course, applying it, that becomes the challenge. But the thing is, I think what's helpful for us in life is when we see red flags. Like when something starts irritating us, okay, that's a flag. Okay, 1 second. Let me not get caught up in what that person's doing. Why am I irritated by it, right? So we have these little emotional triggers or things that can be yellow or red flags for us to realize, okay, I'm getting irritated. Now is when I can apply this mimer. And if we don't do it the first time, we can do it the second time, right? And that's how we apply it practically in life. All right.
Great teaching, Rabbi.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful suggestions. Wonderful suggestions.
God should give all of us the gift to be able to apply it in a healthy and effective way in our life.
Rabbi,
Thank you.
one more thing.
Yes, please.
When a person is judging himself as a result of this, he shouldn't be over judgmental and make himself depressed.
Yeah.
You know why?
Good point.
Because if you judge yourself, you might be a fool.
They say that about a person who has himself as a client, who's representing himself, right?
Yeah.
As a fool for a client. but I guess judging would be the same thing. You're absolutely right? We can never, even when we're working on improving ourselves, we have to do it in the same healthy way as looking at somebody else and realizing, okay, it's a condition, and not getting down on ourselves, not getting depressed, certainly not at all, and realizing, okay, I have a condition, whatever that, however we're going to look at somebody else, and okay, I want to deal with that. Certainly not getting, yeah, thank you for that. Okay, I think I've gone over my time allotment here. You probably am eating into another teacher's time. So be very well, have a wonderful rest of the week, and God willing, we will see you next Wednesday.
Oh, sure.
Thank you,
Thank you
Rabbi.
so
Thank you
much.
very much.
Good day, everybody.
Ты считаешь, что если мы этого